Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, a famous German designer of the Bauhaus, is highly influential and inspirational to contemporary designers due to his infusion of new interwar principles of modernism into his work. Mies van der Rohe was both a teacher at the Bauhaus as well as its most influential and aspiring designers between the 1920s and 30s. His signature style designs were particularly true to form, geometric in shape, sleek, and stripped back of any colour or ornament. His works are numerous, but can be confined to the areas of architecture and everyday household items. Here, I shall depict and elaborate upon the contribution that Mies' work has had in shaping and contributing to modernist design. In particular, this will be displayed through the example of his influence on Jonathan Ives, a contemporary designer for Apple, whose works have expanded upon these principles and ideas of modernism which Mies helped to establish. Ludwig Mies van der Rohe was born on the 27th of March, 1886 in Aachen, Germany. Mies' existence in the design community began at 22, when in 1908 he began his architectural career as an apprentice at the studio of Peter Behrens in Berlin. Between 1908 to 1912, Mies would be exposed to progressive German culture and other unique design theories from which he could derive his own. It was also through this introduction into the design world that he met and worked with Walter Gropius, one of the founders of the Bauhaus, which would be described as arguably the single most influential modernist art school of the 20th century, where Mies would also work from 1923 as its last director. It is here particularly that his modernist design philosophies would flourish, by him adopting and developing their functionalist application of simple geometric forms in the design of useful objects. Each material has its specific characteristics which we must understand if we want to use it, is a famous statement or philosophy of Mies's, and poses a clear depiction of his modernist design philosophy. This statement not only embodies the modernist principle of truth of materials, but it emphasizes the need for one to understand the true nature of their materials in order to create the most efficient product. One of Mies's most iconic designs was the Barcelona chair that he designed in conjunction with Lily Reich for the Barcelona Pavilion in Spain in 1929. This chair follows modernist principles in its design. Utilizing two materials, leather and stainless steel, this chair displays the modernist principle of truth to materials, which allows for simplicity by not overcomplicating the design. This design consists of three main pieces: the legs, which is one piece, and the two cushions, which create the single curve of the bar forming the chair's back and front legs. This singular form allows for more comfort, and thus depicts the modernist principle of form follows function, as well as an anti-historicist design which rejects any needless ornamentation or patterns, and instead presents a simplistic, highly functional product. Also, Mies' Seagram building is another example of his modernist designs, although this time in the form of architecture. The overall design of this building is summed up by Ludwig: less is more. Constructed in 1958 in New York City, this building represents the modernization of New York City, as well as the major shift that would occur across all cityscapes. This shift, both in look and efficiency, reinforces the anti-historicist side of modernism, but also the new style of living that these buildings introduced. This shift in lifestyle could be seen from the much larger spaces provided in these rooms, as well as the inclusion of much more natural lighting. Thus, through the creation and expansion of these modern philosophies in such designs, one is able to define modernity and understand modernization. Furthermore, another aspect which highlights Ludwig Mies van der Rohe's work as modernist are the modern technologies which were used to create them. For example, the modern technology of chrome plating was used on the legs of the Barcelona chair in order to match the pavilion it was placed in. This was a new way of treating furniture and was done to enhance the natural appearance of the metal. This links to one of Mies's most well-known philosophies: God is in the details, emphasizing the fine quality to be found in his work. Also, it was the introduction and mass production of steel which allowed for many of his architectural pieces, such as the Seagram building, to be built in the first place. The inclusion of steel would not only allow for the secure construction of his project, but also see him explore new, modern materials and techniques. As has already been mentioned, the designs of Ludwig Mies van der Rohe express a multitude of modernist design elements and principles. However, in order to examine the social change that was achieved through his work, it is important to identify the time in which Mies was designing, in order to understand the size of the impact he had. The period of time he lived in, and consequently diverted from, is referred to as the Victorian era. Design in this period was very ornamental, eclectic, and very much used as a way to visually display the power of oneself. In contrast to this, Mies' works saw a whole new perspective on design. While he did design his products to still look good, he very much aimed away from the exclusion or ornamentation, and instead focused on functionality and minimalism. This process can be described as him having reimagined the material world to reflect the unity of all arts, which is also how many have referred to the process of design at the Bauhaus. This may seem to be a coincidence, but is a clear reason as to how he became one of its most aspiring designers. This was extremely different from the old era and would allow for much more people to be able to afford these new products and own them rather than be excluded. Across his career as being a designer, Mies has been influenced by political and social conditions, as well as helped bring about social change. Such can be seen through the example of the Seagram building in New York City. The growing population and therein number of workers inspired the design of such an immense and different building, which produced social change, standing tall and almost foreign amongst its neighbours. Thus, here he both responded to and created social change. Much like Mies, Jonathan Ives is another designer whose work has also enforced a sense of social change as well. Ives was born on the 27th of February 1967 and is a contemporary designer who has contributed to the success of one of the world's largest companies, Apple. Ives is an industrial designer who worked at Apple for over 3 decades and established the build and finish of the iMac, amongst the other products of theirs. At Apple, Ives worked under the belief that the computer had become the centre of home life, and thus he attempted to make the iMac, released in 1998, sleek, touchable, and amenable to display. For example, when talking about the success of the iMac, he attributed this to devoting obsessive attention to details that were overlooked by previous designers. Thus, it is clear that he understands the modernist design principle, form follows function, and that this is at the centre of his design philosophy. However, one can also see a clear link between his design method and that of Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. This can be seen through merely comparing Ives' previous statement to that of Mies, stating God is in the details. In order to examine the modernist style with which Ives has and continues to design within, one must first observe some of his designs. One of his most successful projects that he has worked on was the iMac, released in 1998. As seen in this image, this product is designed to be very simple, which at first seems like a drawback, but upon further inspection is its greatest attribute. Through its lack of detail and simplistic form, it does not distract away from its core purpose, that being a computer. Thus, with its minimalist approach, both in form and colour, one can easily identify how to interact with this machine. Therefore, this displays a clear acknowledgement of minimalism as well as form-following function. This piece, in a sense, is very similar to the Barcelona chair designed by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Despite one being a computer and one being a chair, both designs have been created in a way so as to not distract or take away from its main function, but rather amplify it and make each a functional product. Overall, through modernism, the world that we interact with has been forever changed for the better to create a more functional world. However, guiding this banner of modernism were initially inspirational designers such as Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, whose designs have gone on to inspire many other designers such as Jonathan Ives, who continues to create a more modern, machine-age world.